Today we're going to be tying the classic Clouser Deep Minnow. While originally designed for smallmouth bass, this pattern can be used for practically any species and any type of water. What we have here is we have a Gamakatsu B10s size 4. We're also going to be using, as you'll see, dumbbell eye. We've got a fairly sturdy thread. You can use many different types. I prefer to use a UTC 210 or a G or something along those lines, depending upon what type of thread you're using. We're going to use a little bit of super glue, a little bit of head cement. We have flash, and then two different colors of bucktail. We have an olive and we have a white for this particular one we'll be tying today. Okay, so let's start. In order to tie this to get the proper action, we're going to be trying to divide our hook shank into really 3 segments. So segment 1, we can see right about where the hook point ends. And then if we try to find the dividing point halfway between there, right about here, that's where we're going to want to put our dumbbell eyes. That'll give us the classic up and down vertical jiggle. Okay, so we're going to try to imagine to get somewhere around that point. That's where we want the eyes to sit. So we're going to put on a little bit on our thread. Clean it up just a bit. Now, I'm not going to come all the way back. Then I'm going to come forward up to the eye just to lay down a bit of thread for material we'll lay later. Now if you remember, we want to try to put our dumbbell eyes somewhere around here. So I'm going to make a thread bump right in front of that. That's going to prevent the eyes from moving forward. Just a little bit of a thread bump, but it'll be enough to be effective. So then I go ahead, put my thread right where I want to put my dumbbell eye. And this is a secret. Put a little bit of super glue right there. Then take your dumbbell eye and don't put it directly on the hook. Instead, wrap one complete, come back around, of thread on the dumbbell eye. Then bring it down onto the hook. Give 1 wrap, 2 wraps, 3, 4 and 5, all same direction. Come around the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now position your dumbbells where you want. I like to look down the hook shank, make sure I'm straight. I'm a little crooked. Okay, now I'm about straight. Now I'm going to put in another succession of 5 reps. 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's secure. However, we're going to take it a step further, and we're going to go underneath and wrap around. 3, 4, 5. Come back around once, twice. And that's it. That's all there is to dumbbell eyes. We don't need to do lots of crisscrossing. We don't need to do a lot of zagging. That little bit of super glue underneath and that thread that we wrapped around is going to end up locking those eyes in place, and is going to be very solidly held. And afterwards, we're going to further hold all the material together, and we use a little bit of our head cement. Okay, so let's get our thread where we need it. So we're going to go underneath, and we're going to come up and be just in front of those eyes. This is going to be the underside of our fly, because eventually what's going to happen is the hook's going to invert because of these dumbbell eyes on top of the hook shank. So whatever color we put on top needs to be the color for the bottom of our fly. Traditionally, minnows, which this represents, will have a light color on the bottom. So we're going to use our white bucktail for this. Now, less is more. So you can see here I don't have a ton of material. And the old saying goes, once you think you have enough, take about half. And so now that's how much I want to use, and that's going to compress nicely. And we'll even go a little bit less. Believe it or not, The more sparse you tie this, the more effective it'll become. So, pin that back, cut it. Now we have to clean it. So we want to go ahead, hold about halfway, pull it, and you'll see these little fibers. We don't want to tie with those. They add bulk to the head of the fly, and they don't give us anything in the overall design. Now I want to actually use the fibers back here. You can see I have a couple that are a little bit scraggly. So I'm actually going to take those off and manually move them until I get the taper I want. I'm actually going to take these very carefully and restack by hand. So now I've got about a good taper that I want. Now we got to find the length. And this is kind of personal. You can do this, the traditional way is twice the length of the hook shank, so I'm not going to count these little guys, or one or two just a little bit long, but the majority of them end about here. So go 1, 2, and that would be the length of the fly. You can go longer if you want, you can go shorter if you want, it's personal preference. I'll tie this one that classic way. So it's going to end about there. So I've got it measured, switch my hands. Now I have it in my left hand. And I want to snip these fibers. I'm actually going to snip and give myself a little bit of room to work with. Some people cut real close to your fingers, that's fine. I like to have that so that when I put it down, the length of my fibers hit just behind the hook eye. And then I'm going to go ahead and come up with my thread. Now here's the key. Loose wraps for the first, second, and then pull up. Now some people will actually trap the thread back here when they come down to get that loose wrap. You know, I've done it enough times that I don't need to, but you can. So that's now secured. What you could do, if this was our first wrap, we could come up, pinch, come down, and then let that guide to come down. So I'll show you again. And that's a good way to make sure that those wraps go on a little bit loose so that when you put the material down, you can guide it. You actually don't want to pinch it too hard or it'll start flaring and looking kind of crazy. Okay, so we can see here all the ends are trapped. That's all we need. We don't want to build up a huge head and a lot of bulk right now. So now I'm just going to bring the material back close to the eye and come up behind it and come down. So I came behind, up, and brought it down. And I'm not going to put these wraps on tight because if I do, this hair will start flaring all over the place. So instead, I'm going to do loose wraps. Still enough that it's tight, but I'm not binding the hair down. And loose wraps back. And then one good little light cinch, bringing it back up to the front. By doing these loose wraps in the back, still tight enough to hold the material, all I'm doing is guiding the hair down the hook shank of the fly. And that gives me a really nice straight profile. You know, I'll go ahead and I'll adjust as needed. And now this fly is going to have a much better profile. You'll see some where they're all like scraggly and crazy. That's because someone in the back wraps put down too tightly. Okay, so now we're ready to invert the fly. I have a rotary vise, really easy. But if you don't, you know, it's pretty simple to reposition as well. So now what we want to do is we want to lay down our flash material. And this will separate our bottom from top. I like to not use a ton of flash. Again, I'm trying to tie very sparsely. So I'm actually going to take, 3 strands this time. Sometimes I do 2, sometimes I do 4, but I'm going to do 3. 3 strands of material. So as always, material management, I'm going to cut as close up towards the zip tie as I can. And now I have these pieces. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up close to the hook eye, but not all the way, maybe about a wrap or 2 back, and fold in half. That allows me to guide it down, right on, and I'm going to do 1 wrap, 2 wraps. Now this is actually fine, I could just wrap this on and lay it back, but my personal preference is to divide the pieces in half and hold down on both sides and give a couple ties. Personal preference here, you can go back here if you want, put down one, or just leave it up front. I like to leave it up front. And that's it, it's secured. These will not pull out. You know, a lot of people put a ton of wraps in and do a lot of craziness, but when you fold it in half, the material just gets trapped. So we're going to go ahead and trim this at the end. I got a little spring here so I can actually hold it in. And now we're going to move on to our second color. I'm going with an olive on this. I'm trying to do like a baby bass type look, you know, a little fry pattern. You know, you can do any colors you want. The classic is chartreuse over white, but I've tied just about every color combination I can find. They're all effective. I'm not exactly sure that one color over another is more effective, but you know, experiment and try. Alright, so again, I kind of pinched, and I'm going to go a little bit less. So real sparse. I like to have a little more top material than bottom material. That's my preference. So I'm kind of looking, imagining, oh, we'll go a little bit less. Again, sparse is more. Okay. So I got my material. Pinned it back, cutting real close to the hide. And same thing as before. So I'm going to hold about halfway, pull out some little fibers. You probably can't see those. This actually is a pretty good piece of bucktail, so it doesn't have a ton of shorts. And actually you can see that the profile is pretty good all the way through. So I don't need to restack like I did with my white. So for the top pattern, I actually try to measure it so it's symmetrical with the back. And that's going to be right about there. So again, I'm going to kind of pinch with my left, trim it. Now I trim straight. Some people trim at an angle. That works really well for some. For me, the way I tie, the straight cut just works better. And then with this, we're going to hold it at an angle. And we're going to keep it there. So same thing as before. Kind of a loose wrap on top. A second loose wrap. And then we're going to pull up. And this is the key, pulling up as we go. That keeps the hair from spinning and gives us a really nice taper. Now I'm still holding this hair at an angle. As I get towards the back, I'm not going to cinch down hard. Remember how we did before, a little bit lighter? This is just to guide the taper. And now I'm going to put down one or two. So tight wraps all the way up through here, loose wrap, one or two wraps back here just to guide the hair. So now when I let go and we finish, we'll see we'll have a very nice flared pattern. And that's it. If we want, we can build up the head a little bit more. I'll go ahead and I'll do that. I'll put on just one more layer and then I'll actually end up front. Pull out our whip finishing tool. Come down, up, turn, make a triangle, lay on our triangle and spin. 1, 2, 3 will lock it. But I actually will go 4 and 5 and 6 because what I'm doing is trying to get nice flat wraps on the head. Pull it back, pull it out, and pull it tight. And that gives me a nice little cone in the front. So go ahead and I'll trim my thread. And this fly is ready to fish. You know, we just need to trim our flash. But I'm going to make it a little bit more durable. So I'm going to take out my handy dandy head cement, use my bodkin, get a little bead of head cement, and lay it on real careful. I like to put a little bit on the front, a little bit on the back, take my excess, put it back here, and then I'll spin it. I'm trying not to put it on the hair, you know, and just give it a nice even spin around. That'll protect our thread wraps. Get another little dot and go a little bit heavier right on the top here, because this actually is where the fly starts breaking down over time. That back bucktail. It just bounces on the bottom and stuff. And I'm doing just a little bit, I'm being real careful here, just a little bit on those back looser wraps. And then they're locked in. And that's why we can get away with those loose wraps back there, because in the end, they're just going to be hard as cement. So real clean, important, clean your bodkin every time. Close up my head cement. And this fly is, again, just about done. We just need a trim. But what I'm going to do before I do that is just spin it a little bit, keeping an eye on my head cement, making sure it's laying down right. If I need to make an adjustment, I will. But this looks good. So, release the fly. And as you can see, get the hair kind of parted over the hook. That's just preference. We have a really nice vertical profile where it's real, or horizontal where it's flat, and vertical where it's real thin. And that's the look that this fly is supposed to have. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to trim. I like my flash to be just a bit longer. Again, personal preference. So, I'll cut it right about there. And I did a straight cut. Do any type of cut you want. When it's done, the fly looks like that. Thank you.